Hello, welcome back to Rough Around the Edges, which, are we calling this a podcast yet? I don't know. It's literally just me rambling and sharing my thoughts on certain things. And I wanted to share something with you that I had a conversation with a client this week. In fact, I've had this conversation with multiple clients over the years, but I think it was only this week where it's solidified into a real understanding of the stages that people go through and actually being able to articulate it. And I think I've done that because I've had this conversation so many times. And it's one of the reasons why people yo. So if you have ever yo-yoed, cycled, made progress and then gone backwards, this is what I would hazard a guess, a considerable guess that this is the reason why. Something that people don't realize when it comes to personal growth, and when I'm talking about personal growth, I'm talking physically, emotionally, relationship-wise, mentally, mindset, like everything that goes on within personal growth. There are two engines of change. One is pain, and one is pride. So you'll be very familiar with getting to a point in your life where you go, I've had enough. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to experience this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of that. There is a breaking point where we get to. And that is the point where the pain of staying the same is less than the pain of change. Now, until people get to that point, they won't change because people get comfortable in pain. I know it sounds really, what is it? But people think about people who are being chronically overweight, people who don't look after themselves, people who chronically people please. They do it because it serves a purpose. It's probably feeding into an old belief or something like that. But it's when those behaviors, those patterns, those routines lead to the person going, I don't want this anymore. Because it's better the devil, right? Even though I don't like this, I don't like people pleasing, or I don't like being overweight, or I don't like not feeling comfortable taking off my shirt, or I don't like not being able to approach people and make new connections, whatever it might be, you're familiar with it. And lots of us, especially as gay men, have a fear of failure because failure shows that we're not perfect, and we've often tied our self-worth to our ability to be useful, to be smart, to be on time, to be there, to be dependable, to be whatever it is, insert adjective here. That is why so many gay men struggle with perfectionism. It's rooted in shame. And that's something that we talk a lot about with our clients about because it's really getting comfortable with all the parts of ourselves. By the by. So we get to this point where eventually it's more painful to stay the same than it is to actually risk that fear of failure and change. So let's say that you follow that line of thinking and you make progress. You do whatever you do, whether you do it healthily, unhealthily, for the sake of the stages that I'm talking about here, that doesn't actually matter. You get to a point where after a certain amount of time, you are no longer in that pain anymore. You've stopped people pleasing, or you've started looking after yourself, going to the gym and eating well, or whatever it might be. And you get to this point, and that stage is the most vulnerable part that people are in. Because you go from running away from the person that you don't want to be, and you're now far enough away that there's a bit of distance, there's no pain, life is all right, and there's nothing wrong with looking around going, life is all right. But then what people do is they go, I'm done, and they put the cue on the rack, and then they just stay there. And staying still is an illusion. Doesn't exist really, because we're all getting older. The world is spinning. Things that were easier get harder. So even if you stay still, you're actually going backwards. You're just doing it slower than you were before. And so people put the cue in the rack, for want of a better phrase, and then they end up sliding back into these patterns. The kind of world catches up. And then they get to that point of pain again, and they want to move forward and get away from it. And some people spend their whole life running away from the person that they don't want to be, where it catches them up, and they keep running away from it, and they never distance themselves from it. And that's why these people are in cycles. You see people who yo-yo with their weight. You see people who continue to get in and then get out of and then get back into relationships that don't serve them, hang around with people that don't serve them, overwork and deliver at work. What is going on for those people? So what we need to do is we get to a point where once we've got away from that pain, and this is a big thing that I talk about with my clients, once you've got to that point, that is the starting line. That is not the end point. That is the starting line. You have now reached the point where physically, mentally, emotionally, you're able to deal with more problems, and more problems are going to spring up, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But it's really important that we flip. I talked about those two engines of personal growth, one being pain. We now have to flip into the other engine of personal growth, which is pride. So rather than running away from the person that we don't want to be, we start running toward the person that we do want to be. What does he look like? How does he live? What are his values? What's his environment like? What's his friends? What does he do for work? How often does he work? What's he like with boundaries? How does he say no to people? And that can feel really scary. Again, as gay men, we go, well, I need to know exactly what that's like before, because it needs to be perfect before we can set off and do it, right? Wrong. So what we have to do is we have to start why. Generally, what does he do? What area does he work in? This same area that I'm working in now, or is it something else? So then we can start to pivot. Or what kind of relationship does he want to be in? What kind of house does he want to live in? What kind of friends does he want to have? And we can just get we can be very vague with it. But we start working towards that, because when you've got that, essentially like a roadmap in your head, once you've got that, your subconscious will start making decisions that are in line with that. And you'll start doing things, and you'll start seeing opportunities that are going to allow you to move in that direction. As you start getting closer, it's like anything. As you start getting closer to the destiny, it becomes more and more clear, and you'll be able to blink things out. Now, one of the challenges with this is often people have spent their whole life in chaos, running away from pain, going back into it. That is chaos. That's chaotic. And I was very much like this. And I'm not just talking about with health and fitness. I'm talking about with relationships. I'm talking about with just like drama. There are those people who are just chaotic, or there's always something going on. There's always some issue. And a lot of times when people have been in this process a lot, they become those people because they feel comfortable in chaos. It's what they're used to. And when you get out of that, it's like finally getting up out of the water and being able to breathe, and then going, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is new. I don't know what to do. Actually, even again, better the devil. I'll go and invite that chaos back in. And that's another reason why people backslide. But something that is also really important to remember, and I talk to my clients a lot about this, and I remember one client in particular a few years ago now, he was an American guy, and he said, I've got in great shape, I've sorted all my habits out, I've just started noticing all these problems, there's all these things going on, have started in my life that weren't there before. And I said, let's have a look at this. And what actually happens is, when we're in a shit spot where the pain is so much that you want to run away from it, and you want to change your mindset, whatever it might be, your body is very good at staying alive, right? That's why you're still alive here. Your body is very good at doing that. And to do that, it's, especially when you're in that pain, that chaos, you're in survival mode. So your body just blinkers on, what is it that I need to deal with? And often when we're over, these things can be tied, they can be separate, but being overweight, not looking after ourselves, having low self-esteem, having low self-worth, not having any confidence, not having boundaries, all these things, they form a clear and present danger in that they affect us all the time. And so they become the first major things to sort out. And that is something, not all our clients, because not all our clients come to us like that, but that is something that we help a lot of clients with, because they're in that kind of spot where they need to deal with the immediate. And again, what they're kind of doing is we bat off all these challenges at first. And then what people realize, because as you go through that process, you start to build your self-worth. You start to build beliefs in yourself. Maybe you don't believe that you can actually do it. And then when you do it and you go, oh, I can, and that starts to change. And suddenly you look around and you go, I actually don't like my job. I actually don't like the people that I hang around with. I actually don't like my partner. I actually don't want to be spoken to like that by my family. I've actually been putting up with a lot from my boss, or whatever it might be. And people think that these problems have just appeared, that things have changed. People often think that people start speaking and change and seeing them differently, or behaving around them differently. And that is very rarely the case. It's that actually they start to see themselves differently. They start to have self-respect. Looking after yourself is the highest form of self-respect. And suddenly you start going, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not having this anymore. And so these things that weren't issues before because you were so focused on sorting yourself out, you're now in a place where you start to see things and notice these things. And it's because essentially your field of vision has opened up and got wider, and you start, oh, there's a problem there, oh, there's a problem there. And to be honest, when you start on this path towards becoming the person that you want to be rather than running away from the person that you don't, there are problems. There are going to be problems and there are going to be challenges. Everybody's life has problems. The Buddha said life is suffering, right? But you get to choose what your problems are. There are worse problems and there are better problems. A problem being, I didn't get the job of my dreams that I was going for because I'm in a great spot and that's going to really complement my life, is a problem. It's not great, but it's much better than I don't want to interact or meet new people because I feel so gross about myself and disgusted by how I behave that I don't want to leave the house. Very different problems, but problems nonetheless. And don't get me wrong, everything is relative. But often people think, oh, I'm going to sort myself out, I'm going to get away from this pain and that's going to be it, that's going to be done. There's a really good book by a guy called Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game, would recommend. And he basically, the basic principle of the book is that we're never done. You're not done until you're dead. Like, things are going to keep changing, life is going to keep happening, and it's our responsibility to, or not, to continue to strive to move forward. But if we don't continue to strive forward, we go backwards. A friend of mine who's a coach, who I have a lot of respect for, he has a phrase and he says, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I understand what he means by that, because the world is constantly trying to take your time and your energy. That's what I say to my clients all the time. The world is constantly trying to take it. Look, you only have to go on social media and you go, oh, 30 minutes has gone, an hour's gone. Where's that gone? People are trying to steal your attention all the time. I'm trying to steal your attention now, but I'm trying to help you back towards you so that you can focus on yourself and get to where you want to be and live the life that you want to live. So it's really important to remember that when you start to solve these problems, you regulate the big fires, you're going to start seeing these other ones, but they're not new. They've always been there. The point is that you just didn't have the capacity to see them, to deal with them. I don't know if you ever saw the program where Kath and Kim would go in and clean the house. I can't remember what it was called. They'd clean the house because it was gross. And then they'd do it and they go, oh, actually, you'd look at it and go, the house just really needs decorating. Do you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. You've dealt with the immediate problem and then you go, oh, there is actually other stuff that the house needed decorating all along. You couldn't see it because the house was a mess, right? And just to sum this up, when we go into the vulnerable stage where we're flipping from shame and pain and moving away from it towards where we want to be, often we can think that the absence of chaos means that we're done. That's the finish line. But what that means is now the work can really begin. And often people don't want to hear that because they go, it was really difficult to get to this point. But something I always say to clients is the initial bit is the hardest bit, which is why it feels like such a relief when you get your head above the water and you think, well, I don't want to continue basically working this hard. But you don't have to. It can be a much more slower process because you feel a lot more comfortable in your own skin. You're not desperate to get away from things. So it's not, you get to that end bit, but it's not the end bit, it's the middle bit, and it's a bit weird. And you're not broken for feeling like that. It's the middle bit where you're not broken anymore, but you're not quite where you want to be yet. And often that's where people stop. That is where it's so important to keep going. So if you have found that you're one of these people who's been in this thing over and over and you want to get out of it, that is what we help people do at Game On's Coaching. Through physical, mental, emotional health, changing those things to be, ultimately, we want you to be confident in any room that you walk in, anywhere, and be able to live life authentically on your terms and do that for the rest of your life. For us, if a result doesn't last, it didn't work. Our clients' results are lifelong. So if you want to work with us, you can message me, get in touch. All the stuff is below in the description. Let me know what kind of stage you're in at the minute. Are you in the moving away from pain bit? Are you in the transition bit? Or are you moving towards the person that you want to be? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've got any questions, please do shoot them over and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Otherwise, I will see you next week. And if you've enjoyed this, subscribe, share, do all that kind of jazz. See ya.